I'm proud to present the Executive Director of Safe Kids Now, Stephanie Mann. Stephanie is going to take us into the second part of a series on ISIS. Today it's Why ISIS, Why Now? Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Rebecca. Good to see you this morning.
Nice to see you.
We're going to talk a little bit about why ISIS. One of the things we're experiencing now is a clash between civilizations. We're kind of a throwback into the Middle Ages here. The barbarians versus the free world, which is really rather traumatic for everyone. And most people do not understand it and don't know why this has happened. Well, this has happened for a number of reasons. And the conflict in the Middle East really is what I've seen as a crime and violence prevention consultant for a long time. And I mean by that, I have seen how young men can be turned to gangs and their behavior gets out of control. They shoot each other. They have no guidance. And let me tell you where all of this comes from in my experience. I have seen a great deal of domestic violence and child abuse. Working in our cities, people are crowded together so that they know what's kind of going on, but they try not to pay attention. They've lost their connections to each other. Drug abuse is a problem. Well, let me tell you a story about a man I met. He was telling me about and really excited about his son, who was doing so well. And I think he was a banker, and he was just promoted. And I said, "Oh, how many kids do you have?" And he said, "Well, I have 2 boys." And I said, "Well, what does your other son do?" And he said, "Well, he's in prison." And he went on to tell me that he was a difficult child. And he said, one of them I put through college, and the other one I put through the wall. Now that tells you a lot about what was happening in that household. And all of us have children, and some kids are difficult. And if we turn to violence in any way, we have to be incredibly patient. But you can see how this destroys that inner spirit that all of us have. And then they begin to not trust themselves. They begin to doubt their self, and they lose themselves.
Stephanie, when we resort to violence as a solution and then wonder why there's so much violence, aren't we facing our own idiom and our own paradox here?
Absolutely. We are creating our own problem. And, I love what's happening now in America because we are talking more about domestic violence. I have a board. It's called Pinterest. And would you believe I guess it's been about a year and a half. I have 46,000 pins on that board. And it's remarkable to me how people are trying to help each other. They have all kinds of sayings, quotes. Here's a chart to help you get out of domestic violence. But it also says something else. It also says we have a huge problem. And if we're going to keep kids away from terrorism, away from gangs, if they're going to be productive citizens, we must stop the violence against our children. We have to stop hitting, beating, demeaning. There's also the violence within, our mental verbal words can be very detrimental to children. And drug abuse is a huge problem. Let me say that mental, physical abuse is taking a terrible toll on children. It's taking a terrible toll on adults too, because a lot of them turn to drugs when they've been abused. They don't feel good about themselves. They feel inadequate. They don't trust their intuition. They don't They don't have any self-worth. And violence against children does exactly the same thing to the children. So if you're brought up in a loving family where people communicate, talk to each other, and listen, your children are going to do great. But if you have abuse in the family, whether it's a boyfriend, a mother, grandmother, whoever, what happens to a child is that they stop trusting who they really are, and it makes it very difficult for them to find their own identity, who they really are, because who you really are is your spirit, your soul. And every child has an amazing spirit that cannot evolve if they are abused. So that needs to stop in any family. So it's up to us as human beings to stop tolerating that around us too.
This escalation of abuse, not only of each other, but even of ourselves, has become a worldwide crisis.
Absolutely.
Is this why you chose the title, Why ISIS? Why Now?
Yes, because what you're seeing in gangs, as I mentioned, is the same kind of behavior. We have a police department and we have a prison, we have prisons to put people that kill others, but in tribal societies, they don't have that. And what you're also seeing is religion being misused to control people's behavior. Um, and you know very well, Rebecca, how that comes about, because I would call ISIS a cult of barbarians. That's what they're turned into. And unless we can set an example. Now, everybody has a role here. In the United States, number one, we have the government. They have to stop the flow of money somehow into these organizations. The military, they have to stop the criminal behavior of the leaders. I call them the puppet masters. And the puppet masters are pulling the strings on their followers, just like they do in a cult. So these are puppet master cults, if you will. And then you've got the people themselves. We need to set role models here in the United States. We have very poor record on child abuse, domestic violence, and this has taken a big toll on all of us. You see the bullying in schools. It starts out at a very early age. So the role of a neighbor, we need to have communities better connected so that people, for example, years ago, people used to stop children from bad behavior when they were 4 and 5 years old. They didn't wait until it got into gangs and they were killing each other, because then it's practically impossible. So we've got to stop the bad behavior with kids, and all kids misbehave. All kids do the wrong things, and they need to be corrected by adults. But we need responsible adult behavior. So we need people to grow up.
The word responsible adult behavior. Unfortunately, there are millions of people that do not comprehend the word responsibility. They want to force, punish, deny, turn a blind eye, anything except require and teach responsible behavior. We have made an industry out of punishment without requiring responsibility. Where are we going with this, Stephanie?
Well, we're not going very far unless we really start helping each other. It's going to be a matter of people connecting with each other and helping. We have amazing people in our neighborhoods that most of us have no idea who they are. We don't even know them. And they are our support system. But if we don't connect with them, they cannot support us. You know, Rebecca, it's very interesting. If you watch television and you see the catastrophes around us, such as a hurricane or fires or droughts or even snowstorms, as we have right now, you'll see neighbors coming out and helping each other. And there's always that, oh, look how wonderful the neighbors are. They're helping to feed the kids, they're helping to take charge of children, they're helping to get you out of a burning house. But if everything's going pretty good, people forget that, and the kids are out in the streets playing, but there's no correction. We need to help each other on a continual basis, not just when we have an emergency. So that's where we're going, I hope, is making neighborhoods safer, connected, and a much happier place for all of us to live. Because we all want to live in a happy place. And it really helps to have good neighbors that communicate.
Stephanie, you talked about neighbors helping in crises. And that is human nature, because the bottom line is people care about people
Yeah.
normally when they're healthy. Unfortunately, the media sells most of its product on catastrophes and on people not caring about each other. And this is what our young people are absorbing.
Well, the media affects us in many different ways. You cannot turn on television without seeing somebody hitting up somebody over the head or shooting them or killing them. I mean, they even have programs called revenge and murder and, mayhem. I mean, that is the steady diet we are feeding our kids. But children have an innate sense of responsibility if we foster it. And we need to do a better job with our media, and more of us need to complain about what you see on television. If you don't like it, you can do more than just turn it off. You can complain to the sponsors. Sponsors listen. As a matter of fact, sponsors will tell you that for every letter they get or email, it represents 100 people. So you're not just talking for yourself, you're talking for those 100 people when you complain about what you're seeing on television and what you would like to see. What would you like to see? How about some inspiring stories? There are a million inspiring stories out there, but we're not hearing them. We're not hearing about the people that are making amazing changes in their communities. I can write a whole list of people, including yourself, Rebecca, who have made such changes in the community, and yet we don't hear your story. We don't. Why don't we? Because we're not asking for those kind of stories. We need to talk and let our voices be heard on what we would like to see on television and the media, because your children are absorbing what we are selling. What they're selling out there is what they're learning.
Teaching our children unwittingly through media and everyday life. They don't know the difference between making a mistake and being one. And usually they believe they are a mistake before they act one out.
Especially if they've been abused. I'll tell you, if they've been verbally abused, if you constantly put a child down, they don't feel good about themselves. And this is why we have a tremendous amount of young people turning to drugs. Not just, 1.5 million kids are taking legal drugs. They're going to school and getting their pills. I mean, that was unheard of when you and I grew up.
Well, these kids are trying to avoid the pain of reality.
Well, and also the pain of reality starts in their own home.
Exactly.
So we have got to take a really hard look at child abuse, and we have to take a hard look at domestic violence, because seeing that happen in the home is devastating to a child.
We teach our children through media and advertisements and so much garbage that they are not a human being, they're an object. They are identified with their sexuality.
Right.
They are identified with their glitz and pretense of what they have rather than who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the little boys are really double sabotaged because they are identified with their capacity to be cruel, to be dominant, and to take.
Mm-hmm.
And then they tell them that that is what a man is. A gorilla can do that.
Well, and you know, the kind, sweet little boy, he gets teased and he thinks he has to act like that. We are a society in conflict right now, and we need to address all of those issues and start talking about them among ourselves, among our families. Dr. Phil, if you watch his show at all, he has one crisis family after another. And they are representative of some of the things that are going on. And we need to look at our own families and decide how much of this are we going to tolerate. And if you're sitting back and saying, it doesn't affect me, oh, yes, it affects everybody because your house may be burglarized by a teenager that's alienated from his family. It's not about stealing money, it's about power and control. He feels in control when he breaks into your house. He feels powerful when he bullies another child. We are spiritually off centered, and we need to get back to our roots, which are Christian Judeo roots of love thy neighbor, care about each other. We are our brother's keeper. And when we do that, we are going to see some changes made.
When we start discrediting someone else, we need to look inside and wonder where we got that idea that it was either discredit or be discredited. Either one is wrong. It's an out of balance, serious situation. We need to teach our sons and daughters what a man and a woman is. They are not mean manipulators or sexual objects. Our young people don't even know what a man is.
I agree with that. A man is strong, moral, and he can speak up without anger. He doesn't use his fists. He doesn't use his anatomy to feel powerful. He doesn't need to because his presence is very, well, you can tell a real man by the way he acts toward women and children, how he acts toward his fellow man, what he does in his life. So,
He's a leader, a protector, a guide.
That's right.
A source of confidence.
And we need a lot more of those guys around.
A source of wisdom.
Right. Yeah. And, one of the things that we have been doing at safekidsnow.com is we have put together a binder, which is called the Safe Neighborhoods Program. And it should be first priority in every city, to have a committee of community leaders put together and evaluate how do we help strengthen the family. And anybody can pick up this binder and go out and make presentations to a group of people and in a neighborhood or at a community center or any place. And we have 100 little books that they can give out with this safety program binder program and get people involved. You can make a difference. I can make a difference. Rebecca can make a difference. We can all do something to change what's happening in our communities. And it's not that difficult, but we need to get together and have that committee take a look at how do we strengthen families.
What are we saying? What are we doing? Are we caring? Are we ignoring? Are we running away from life? Or are we embracing it?
If you're not involved, you're part of the problem. So if you think your absence doesn't make any difference, it does. It makes a big difference. You have to the least you can do is know your neighbors, to connect with them. The least you can do is help your family be strong and safe within themselves and create that safe place for your kids. That's the least you can do. And then once you get that together, then you can go out and help other people. Because all of us can do something to make a difference and to create peace in our homes and neighborhoods.
When we start recognizing the value in ourselves and in each other, we start finding it.
Oh, yes.
And
It's
when we recognize it and we find it, we teach it, we uplift it, and we embrace it, and it grows. And if we want to look the other way and see everything bad, we're going to find it.
it's there too. You know,
Yes.
we're all like pebbles in a pond. You drop the pebble in the pond and you watch the ripples. Well, all of us as individuals are exactly the same. We're dropped in that pond in our home. We ripple out our behavior. We're in a neighborhood. We ripple out our behavior in the neighborhood and in the community. So we all have an effect on each other. Uh, there's no feeling that that doesn't happen because it does.
I know that I had a lot of children while I was a child.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I did the best I could with the knowledge that I had. However, I look back and I think, wow, we all need a helping hand, a loving start, someone to guide us and help us because your innate feeling wants to be better than who you are. We need to recognize that betterness in each one of us and help to build that.
The book that Malcolm Gladwell wrote called Outliers. And in that book, he tells about Rosetta, Pennsylvania. Two doctors sharing information over a cup of coffee. And one doctor says to the other, wow, I've got people dying of heart attacks, cancer, uh, all kinds of diseases in my community. And the other doctor said, really? The people in Rosetta only die of old age. And they said, wait a minute. Said, you know what? This is important. We need to do a study or something and find out exactly what's going on in Rosetta that isn't going on in my community. So they got a grant. They went to Rosetta and I think they were there 2 or 3 months. They talked to everybody in the community. And what they found out was people smoked, they were overweight, they had the same bad habits that most of us have, eating too much, whatever. And they couldn't figure it out until they started walking around the community. And what did they find? People that were connected to each other. They found people that belonged to all kinds of civic groups, the church, they were connected families, they were interconnected, let's put it that way. Now, I don't have any illusions that we're going to go back to having that strong a bond, but we sure can do a lot better than we're doing today because a lot of people and a lot of children are very disconnected. And that's the problem with drugs, violence, and mayhem. And going back to talk about ISIS, what you've got there, you've got tribal men controlling, the puppet master is controlling all of their followers, but they do have a purpose. They do have strong guidelines on what you can do and what you can't do. For women and men, people like to have that kind of structure. They have a strong belief system. The reality is what you believe. It's what I believe. If I believe that killing other people is wonderful and I'm learning it as a kid, I'm going to believe and kill people in the name of God. If I believe God is loving and caring and wants us to be connected, then I will be loving and caring and connected. That is what our community should be about. So, to defeat ISIS, we do need the military. Absolutely. We've got to stop the puppet masters. And then we have to go out and change ourselves because we have to become the example for a democracy, for a healthy nation that is connected, concerned about each other, because we've got a lot of groups out there that are willing to help, and we need to pull it together.
For as long as we've had written words of any kind, there have always been groups of people that have used God and religion
Right.
to destroy other people with, to manipulate them, to put them in slavery, and literally to destroy them. In the real world, there's no opposite side of good. It's either good or it's not.
Yeah.
And if one spells God with two O's, no matter what religion or non-religion they come from, if it isn't good for all concerned, one cannot blame God. One must blame one's ego. And until we can educate people to realize if it is not good for the human race, for everyone concerned, if it's violent, if it's mean, if it's cruel, God has nothing to do with it. That is power, ego, and fear. Evil, cruelty is motivated by fear and power. And those who take fear and power remain in fear, for fear somebody will take it from them.
Yeah.
You can't win.
No. You know, finding your own strength is an inner journey that all of us must take if we're going to find peace. Peace starts with us within ourselves.
Right.
So in our connection to God, in a loving God, not an evil God, we must look within ourselves, make that connection, and learn how to listen to our conscience, learn how to listen to our intuition, and learn how to listen to our instincts, because all of us have that. We cannot blame other people for where we are. Stop blaming. And I cannot tell you how much I've heard people say, well, if it wasn't for my husband, I wouldn't have gotten into the drug problem. I'm sorry. It's about you taking responsibility. Well, then you hear the wife said, well, if my husband hadn't had an affair, I wouldn't have had an affair. No, you take responsibility. We all come into this world alone, and we die alone. And in between that time of birth and death, we are totally responsible for what we do in our lives. And if we make really bad choices, or just little choices that are really bad, they all affect you. When we become self-aware, then we make good choices for ourselves, our families, our neighbors, and our community. And if you are going out and hurting people, that is a power that is very self-destructive. I mean, can you imagine strapping on a bomb and teaching people that this is good? To strap on a bomb and go and blow up a bunch of people. I mean, just because, that's our religion? No, that is not a religion. That is evil in its worst sense. How do we stop it? And how you stop it is by setting the examples, and the military have to take out these puppet masters, and we all have to work together to make our communities stronger so that our children are not tempted to go into a gang or over to ISIS.